Well, I mean, the fun thing about like Pokemon obviously is that you get to focus on the creatures. And I will always say, like, no matter what version of Dungeons and Dragons I was playing out, the one book that was always a must have for me was whatever the current version of the Monster Manual or Monsterpedia or whatever they're calling it in that particular version, because it's just fun imagining this world was just full of so many things that aren't here. The idea of a place populated with things that aren't of this world, is that for you a part of the appeal of the idea of the game creation? Obviously, as an artist yourself, there's a lot of open runway in that.
Oh yeah, there's I've definitely been very interested in like things like world building, for example. That's probably one of my other things that I'm actually good at, I suppose. I will say I'm good at it at least. Hasn't really been tested, but it's game design, art, and world building. Those are my skills.
Now, you kind of brought this up when I asked people what questions you want to come up in the show. One of the ones you actually asked to come up was the idea of how game design impacts world building. And that's not necessarily, I guess, something I've ever really thought about. So I'm kind of interested to hear like what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, no, that's something like I've seen implemented in a lot of games, but I don't hear many people actually like discussing it as a concept. So like it's very interesting to me because like when I was talking about Magic the Gathering and all that, they would used to do, and maybe they still do. I haven't paid attention in recent years, but they do like whole articles about how they like built each of the new planes that they're visiting, and you could see that like they had very intentional ways of building the plane to incorporate like the five colors of mana and stuff like that. Because if you're building a card game like that, you kind of need to have a proportional representation of each color in each set. Otherwise, one gets left out or something. So that kind of has to be reflected in the world building in a way. And so they'll build a new world and have like, here's the red faction, here's the blue faction, here's the green faction, or they'll mix it up and have like dual colors or tricolors or enemy colors mixed together or something like that. So that kind of turned me on into thinking like how else could this be used? And really, like when you're doing a tabletop RPG, it's almost like the world building and the game design are basically the same thing. Because if you make a rule about how the game world functions, then that's something that your players can interact with and kind of game themselves. And I came to that conclusion, to that realization, I don't know, probably like a year ago, where I'm like, I can work in a lot of this world building as like new mechanics or something like that.
Well, certainly, like my personal favorite game is New World of Darkness, and that's a really tough game because of like the way that it handles its dice rolls. These done with successes, and it always felt like it made the world A seem a little bit more gritty, which goes hand in hand with I think how they wanted that game to feel. But it also felt more natural to me. Like when you're firing off rounds at a monster, like it should be pretty darn hard to hit the damn thing. And so you want to have a more difficult, system for that. And so definitely the system goes hand in hand with how the gameplay is going to feel. And like that world is just inherently going to feel more dangerous when it's harder to kill things. And especially when you're dealing with monsters as like humans in a Mortals campaign, you should feel like you're going to die in pretty much every situation you're in.
Yeah, well, there's also like just things about like how the magic systems function and things like that. Like in D&D, the whole thing with like spell slots and the way people memorize spells and things like that, that plays into how the world will function. And that's just a straight up game mechanic right there. And I've seen a lot of video games do this too, especially like indie games are very they'll use this a lot where they practically like build the entire game world around like a specific mechanic that's very prominent. Like I played this one game, I forget what it's called off the top of my head, but it was like the premise of the game in the world is that like you're some kind of weirdo manifestation from like a storybook or something, and you have to like go into other storybooks and like fight off some kind of corrupting force that's like changing the stories or something like that.
I'm interested in this game, just for the record. It's very up my alley.
It's been a while since I played this, but it, it's a little fuzzy. It's something weird like that. But yeah, just the whole premise like is like it's a it's a coat of paint over the mechanics to like justify why like the game mechanics are the way they are.
Well, it's like any if you ever play any HP Lovecraft themed game, there's always going to be a game mechanic centered around madness, and it's usually the biggest pain in the ass part of the game. But it's also like part of the structure and why the game is the way the game is. It's also part of why the story is the way the story is. I mean, the whole cool part about Lovecraft is it's, otherworldly beings and always on the verge of sanity.
Yeah, it's kind of like what's that game? Um Darkest Dungeon. That was one that was very tight when it came to the resource management. Excuse me. And they dealt with the sanity a lot for your characters and stuff like that. That game drove me crazy though.
Anything that has a sanity check, honestly, their World of Darkness had one, and I'm going to be honest, most of the people I played with, we just kind of ignored that particular thing because it was more cumbersome as a rule than it was worth having. So, it all is what it is. One of the questions you also brought up, this one actually was really interesting to me. So when I asked you, what's a topic in marketing we could talk about? And you mentioned getting over the stigma of marketing. And as a guy who does marketing, I love talking about it. I love getting into the psychology of like why people want things and how you can actually convince them that what you have is worth having. When you're talking about the stigma, I think I've got a pretty solid idea of what you're talking about as I bring up that Niobe Games conversation I had with Draw and Talk, Tyler. Um, that guy just according to him, all marketers are scam artists. They don't do anything valuable for anybody, even though most of the really good marketers I know, they make percentage, they make part of what they make off of people in most cases. The exception being like low tier copywriters that'll just charge like hourly rates and stuff like that. So it's like if they don't make money, then you don't make money, then they don't make money. So just the idea of someone hating marketing for hating marketing's sake seemed weird to me. But I do recognize it's out there. So I'm assuming that's kind of where you're coming from with that question, right?
Yeah, it's especially like prominent amongst creatives. It just feels like it feels dirty to kind of go out there and shove your stuff into people's faces and trying to get them into it. But it's something that people need to do if they want to make any kind of living off of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. If nobody sees your stuff, nobody buys your stuff, period.
Right. And like, I don't think anybody actually likes ads unless they're a professional marketer, maybe. But, I've kind of come to a realization not long ago that, most of ads are annoying. Yes. I hate ads. I don't like it when ads are in my way, but I just scroll past them and all that. And at best, they're forgotten. Then there's like the 1% of ads, 99% of ads. I'm like, get this out of the way. But then every once in a while, I come across one and I'm like, oh, I want this.
So so my wife used to complain so much about Facebook and all the ads that she'd get, and I'm like, well, it's because you're doing Facebook wrong. And the reason I say that is because, so for me, I went to great lengths to make sure that what what Facebook would show me was very curated. And so there was like a sweet spot where like all Facebook showed me was bands that I might like. Like that was the only advertisements I got because I'd like tell them not to show me anything else, and then make sure I clicked. Oh, this is cool. Show me more of this. And so I'd get like maybe 2 or 3 posts from people I know, and then like an ad for some band. And you know, I guess I'm about like, I don't have any problem with people showing me things that I might actually want. My problem is when they show me crap I don't want, or when I go onto YouTube and I'm trying to like, click a trailer for a movie I'm interested in seeing, and then they show me a trailer for a movie before I can watch the trailer that I want to watch. And I'm like, I opted in to watch this advertisement, guys. Like, you're advertising me on my advertisement. Like, this just feels wrong, feels stupid.